So I would like to update some things which I've said in the past which were totally, totally wrong. So this will be the section where Scott eats crow, like lots of it. 3 crows, at least. This is a 3 crow morning, so you might enjoy this. Here are 3 things I've said in the past that I know now to not be true. Number 1, I've said narcissism isn't real. It's just people who think well of themselves. What's wrong with that? I'm going to tell you why I'm wrong about that. Projection. I've said projection isn't real. People don't actually blame other people for the crimes they're committing at the moment. That's not a real thing. That's a real thing. Number 3, gaslighting. I told you there's no such thing as gaslighting. That's just something that happened in a movie. Sure, some people are wrong about things. Some people are crazy, but there's no gaslighting. That's not a real thing. Gaslighting is a real thing. Here's why I was wrong. And in learning why I was wrong, you're going to learn something maybe kind of important. It goes like this. First of all, narcissism, when I was saying it's not real, it's just people who have a good opinion of themselves, and it might actually help them perform better. It turns out that narcissism is not just thinking you're pretty great. Because if that's all it was, a lot of people would be narcissists. But it turns out that, like addiction, have you ever been around anybody who was addicted, let's say an alcoholic? And have you ever been amazed that when you start reading the literature, that somebody who's an alcoholic fits a whole bunch of behavior predictions that are so specific, you think, well, that can't be so predictive. Couldn't it be that just all kinds of different people, they like alcohol more than other people, and that's all it is? Why would it be that the people who seem to be alcoholics have behavior in common? Like, that doesn't make sense, right? But it's true. I mean, anybody who's been around addicts knows there's a certain set of behaviors that you can pretty much rely on for this group of people. Now, it turns out that narcissism is this sort of catch-all category for a bunch of behaviors. And there's more than one kind of narcissism, etc. The kind which I was speaking to when I said it's not real, I maintained that same opinion, but I was using the word wrong. So my opinion didn't change, but my definition of what that word means is now modified. So my opinion that if somebody's only problem is they think they're a little bit better than they really are, that's not a mental health problem. Because I live in that world all the time. And it just helps me perform better. I mean, let me give you an example. When I was a kid, I believed that with no training whatsoever, I could someday become one of the most famous cartoonists in the world. Am I a narcissist? Yeah, that's a completely unreasonable imaginary hallucination of what I could do. Now, it turns out I did that. When I wrote my first book, I said to myself, I've never even taken a class in writing except one workshop on business writing. And I thought, but I'll bet I could write a best-selling book on my first try. Narcissist. I mean, what else would you call that, really? How many people say, hey, I think I could write a best-selling book, even though I've never written anything like a book? Well, I said that. Wouldn't you diagnose that as a little bit not quite right? Right? So I wrote my first book, The Dilbert Principle, and it was a #1 bestseller for weeks. What do you do with that? Right? My longest fantasy that I've ever had from childhood is that someday my opinions would be so valued that I would be invited to the White House to talk to the president in the Oval Office. An actual, literal, continuous, I guess, fantasy, if you will, that someday I would just be recognized as having opinions worthy of the president inviting me over just to chat. And then that happened. That literally exactly happened. Now, what do I do with that, right? Should I check myself into a mental health clinic? Because I've had thoughts about my own potential success that are really unreasonable. I mean, by any measure, well, thank you, Mike. That is far too kind. By any measure, I fit the definition, right? But it's not mental health in terms of it being an issue, because it actually seems to motivate me to work harder and accomplish things. So here's the point. When I was saying that narcissism is not a problem, it's not a mental health problem, the mental health professionals actually agree with that. Okay? The kind I was just describing, the very narrow kind, where you just have a pretty good opinion of your abilities, probably not a problem because it makes you happy. It might bother other people, but that's sort of their problem, right? So I'm going to stick with my opinion that if you were to very narrowly and incorrectly, by the way, if you were to incorrectly use narcissism just for a high opinion of yourself, that's not a mental problem. So I keep that opinion. Professionals agree with me. What I didn't know is that there's this whole set of other behaviors that come with it. One of them is projection, that only the narcissists do. So when I said that's not real, people don't literally accuse you of the thing they're doing. Like, that would just be so on the nose. And it is true that people don't do that. Your average person doesn't do projection. I mean, not much. Maybe they do a little. But the narcissists do it only. They do it continuously. So that's just part of the personality trait that comes with the package. The other is the gaslighting question, which I said there's no such thing as gaslighting. I was correct in the definition I was using, which was the original definition. Where I'm incorrect, 100% incorrect. And by the way, when I'm done with this, I know from experience that I can say a sentence like, I was 100% incorrect, and somebody later will say, why don't you admit you were wrong? And I'll say, what does 100% incorrect sound like, if not admitting you're wrong? But watch, it's going to happen in the comments. And here's the difference. Gaslighting, the way it was originally invented, shall we say, was making somebody doubt their sanity, but that's your point. You're trying to make somebody think they're crazy. The way it's been used in popular use is not like that. So the original definition, I still say, it's not a thing. People aren't doing that. Nobody's doing that. But the way it's used in popular discussion, and now I would say it's common usage, so I would say that the definition, I will respect that definition because it's common usage now, which is that there's so much lying going on that you start thinking you're crazy, but it has nothing to do with the intention of the person doing it. The person doing it is just lying. That's it, they're just lying. The effect is that you think you're crazy, but nobody's intentionally making you crazy. That's where I had a difference with the definition. But given that gaslighting is apparently something that every narcissist does, along with projection, along with lying, and here's, you want to hear the freakiest part? Right, here's the part I'm not sure you're going to believe. But it goes like this. The narcissist, in order to protect their fragile ego, which is apparently the source of all the other behavior, will have instant memory loss when they are caught in a lie. And it will look to you like they're just lying again. But it's not. It's freakier than that. It's instant rewriting of memories. And when you see it in person, it's like, you won't even believe it. So these are behaviors that are very specific to a certain type of person. So let's talk about Joe Scarborough. You may have seen this morning that he had a big rant where he was yelling, and of course some of it was theatrical, but it looked like he was actually a little bit out of control. You can't tell how much was for the camera. But is there anything that would trigger Joe Scarborough into rage? Anything that would look like, oh, did I mention that there's another term that's called the narcissistic rage? Have you ever heard of it? Narcissistic rage happens when you catch somebody lying who is a narcissist. So let's say, for example, the narcissist said, there's nothing in my hand. But yet you could point to it and say, yeah, there's something in your hand. Right there, right there. And the narcissist will say, no, there isn't. No, there's nothing in my hand. And you'll say, let me get 100 scientists and they do a study. Yeah, we're all looking at it. It's right in your hand. But if you catch a narcissist cold, like there's just no way out, they have a very predictable path next. Did you know what it is? Rage. Yeah, if you catch a narcissist in a lie, they won't just lie again, although they might try that first. But when they know they can't get out of the lie, they go into rage, and the problem is you and things that you've done in the past. Apparently, that is so predictable within this personality set of traits that you can just say, okay, this is going to happen next. Caught you in a lie, narcissistic rage comes next. After that, we'll be blaming me for something that happened a long time ago. And look how specific that is. Blaming you for something that happened a long time ago to divert you from what's happening to today. That's very specific, and it's part of the personality trait, which is weird. So